Mad Max Fury Road is one of those rare, untouchable movies. It's this tightly wound little machine of visuals, editing, sound, and story structure. Every detail is drenched in topical metaphor. Every transition and camera movement is worthy of collegiate study. And even if you were oblivious to the movie smacking you in the face with its message, you'd still have one of the best action films of the 2010s that didn't involve John Wick. And yet I hesitated when the idea of a Furiosa prequel was pitched. Fury Road already gave Furiosa a compelling character arc. A prequel meant there'd be little to no presence from Charlize Theron, and it felt like the kind of IP-stretching director George Miller hadn't previously been interested in when it came to the franchise. Not to mention, it would have to deal with the typical prequel hurdles. We know where our main characters have to wind up by the end of the movie, and giving explanations for previously established character traits are never as interesting as studios think they are.
Solo.
And unfortunately, it's Furiosa's status as a prequel that halts it from being great and forces it to settle for just good. Set roughly 20 years before the events of Fury Road, the film follows Furiosa as she goes from being a young girl kidnapped from her home to a road warrior caught in a conflict between Immortan Joe and Chris Hemsworth's Dementis, the warlord leader of a biker gang who killed Furiosa's mother. And before I start ranting about my frustration with the film, let's talk positives. Anya Taylor-Joy brings the intensity the role demanded. There are large chunks of the movie where she has to convey a number of emotions with just her eyes and minimalist dialogue, and she pulls it off. Chris Hemsworth might not be the walking embodiment of toxic masculinity we got with Joe, but his swaggering, bombastic persona breathes life into the film whenever he's on screen. Think the pomp and circumstance of current-day Seth Rollins mixed with Matt Berry.
You really are the most devious bastard in New York City.
There are 3 legitimately great action sequences, and one takes up like the first 30 minutes of the movie. There aren't many innovations on the desert apocalypse aesthetic this time around. Nothing comes close to the Doof Warrior, but parasailing raiders and weaponized truck nuts are fun new additions. There are moments when Miller shows he still has his visual storytelling fastball. The gradual degradation of Dementis' white cloak, and Furiosa losing the arm that had the star map tattoo she made for her way back home both come to mind. And finally, when the movie is about the toxicity and emptiness that comes from the blind pursuit of revenge, it works. But that brings us to the true problem at the heart of the film. It didn't need to be a prequel. Change up the names and locations, don't use Joe because Furiosa's conflict is never directly with him, and have Tom Burke's obvious Max substitute just be Max, and problem solved. But every scene from the Citadel, every car chase involving a war rig flanked by war boys, every shot of Joe and his faction attempting to look menacing, it's all just a reminder that this has been done better elsewhere. And it really doesn't help that Miller brings back similar shots from 9 years ago, ends the film exactly where Fury Road began, and loads the credits with shots from Fury Road. I get we're supposed to judge a film on its own terms, but the film has to meet us halfway and not keep hitting us with references to its predecessor. It's not world building, it's not thematic cohesion, it's member berries. And even with all that aside, the pacing is a mess, and I'm not just talking about those chapter breaks people keep making fun of. There's long stretches of slow, contemplative scenes, but once we get around to the climax, it sprints its way to the finish line. It even goes through the big war between Joe and Dementis via montage, even though that easily could have been the second half of this movie. Overall, Furiosa is an echo of Fury Road and not much else. That still makes it better than plenty of movies out there, but it left me praying that Miller will find a way to make one more Mad Max movie before retiring. Because as far as franchise finales go, this would be a letdown. Thanks for watching.